All right, so NFL Week 2 started off a bang just like Week 1 did. And this season, it started off pretty hot. I mean, the opening night game was really good. You had the Monday Night Football game that was amazingly stupid in its own way. And same with this game. I mean, the NFL has put on three really good primetime games already this year. So this season is looking very promising. But if we look at the Thursday night game, Washington defeated the Giants 30-29. And if we look at the Washington, well, at first let's look at the end of the game because the end of the game was crazy because Washington had a lead 27-26, and then Taylor Heineke, with his only mistake of the day, threw an interception, giving the Giants the ball back, which allowed them to kick a field goal to take the lead 29-27, and then Heineke got the ball back, was able to drive them down the field just like he did at the end of the first half, and got them into field goal range. Well, the kicker for Washington missed the first attempt, and then of course, the Giants shot themselves in the foot like they did all night and lined up offside or jumped off sides, giving Washington another chance to kick a field goal. He then made the second attempt, allowing the Washington football team to win 30-29. Now, if we look at Washington in this game, Heineke had himself, I think, a really good game. I mean, his last two starts shows that he can be a potential starter in this league. I mean, last year against the Bucs in the playoffs, the Washington played the Buccaneers closer than any team had that entire playoff run. So I feel like, and then this game by Heineke, I feel like Heineke could be a starting quarterback. And if he continues to play well when Fitz comes back, it might be close. But Heineke had 336 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, and like I said, that one bad interception that almost cost him the game. But again, the Giants shot themselves in the foot. Terry McLaurin is their best receiver. He's very good. And just shout out to Ricky Seals-Jones. I think he used to play on the Chiefs, had a really nice grab in that game. And then if you look at the defense of Washington, Jonathan Allen and Chase Young, that defensive line is going to be amazing. Like that, I really like those two working together. So that's going to be a very good combo for probably a few years, honestly. And then if you look at the Giants, Daniel Jones didn't lose them the game. He had himself actually a really good game. He had 249 passing yards, touchdowns, 95 rushing yards. Should have had more, but on one of his, or should have had a rushing touchdown, but on that one rush, his receiver decided to hold, negating the touchdown, only allowing them to get 3 points on that drive instead of 7, which really cost them. Offensive line, I mean, obviously is going to need work, especially because one of their starters went down, and it was a horrific injury because even Fox didn't want to show, or the NFL Network didn't want to show, whichever one. But they look good. If Daniel Jones gets the ball out quick, he's going to be fine. But their run blocking needs work because Saquon only was really able to get off one decent run that entire game, and then Daniel Jones running. They were running zone read, so I mean, usually those you can always get off if you feel fluky one of those, even against one of the best defenses in football. But like I said, Giants shot themselves in the foot multiple times. Lots of penalties that ended the drive for the teams, but then also should have allowed them to get the defensive get off the field. Like even Washington had a couple. Chase Young had a really bad penalty. You had the penalty that negated the touchdown. You had the offside that lost the Giants the game pretty much. I mean, there was plenty of times the Giants could have won, but even the interception, even if that drive they kept the ball, they probably could have won a little bit, or had the ball, ran the clock a little bit, and then ended with the field goal. I mean, maybe that one drive maybe cost them, even if they scored points on it. But I mean, at least Daniel Jones wasn't the reason they lost the game. I think Daniel Jones played amazing, and then like I said, Heineke should be a starter in the NFL. So before I get into the Sunday games, because I'm recording this separate from the Thursday night game, let's talk about the taunting rule. It's stupid, and everybody hates it. I don't understand what the league is trying to do with this taunting rule. It makes the game really boring. They're not allowed to have fun, and it doesn't make any sense. Nobody likes this rule. The fans hate it. The players hate it. Coaches hate it. It ruins the flow of the game, and it just doesn't make sense. It's something that does not need to be enforced in a football game. If a wide receiver breaks off for a huge play, they should be able to look at that defender and be like, you suck. You need to get better. Same with the defensive player. They have a great pass defense, or they get a great sack, or they dominate an offensive lineman. They should be able to look at that dude and be like, you suck. It goes both ways. It's sports. It doesn't need to be, governed so hard like this. It's sports. Let them play. And there's literally no reason for this taunting rule to be in place. Get rid of it. It's stupid. Nobody likes it. Now, let's get on to the games for this week. The first game we have is the Rams-Colts. Rams won 27-24. Matthew Stafford had 278 yards, 2 touchdowns, and interception. Cooper Kupp had a monster game, grabbing 9 receptions for 163 yards and 2 touchdowns. Carson Wentz had 247 yards, a touchdown, and a really funny interception on a shovel pass. He just ruined the shovel pass for everybody. And this game, Cooper Kupp, like I said, was awesome. The Rams offense, it definitely with Matthew Stafford, like I've been saying, I really like them, and I think it's going to be fun. Michael Pittman, however, for the Colts, the Colts have a really good receiver in him. Rams special teams play wasn't very good. They gave up a touchdown, which allows this game to look a little bit closer than it should, because it should be about a 10-point swing for the Rams, but really they only won by 3. And then for the Colts, the play calling was terrible. They had like 2 or 3 drives in the red zone where they didn't come up with anything. I think they had that terrible interception by Wentz, and then there was like a 4th and 1 where they just got stuffed. The Colts didn't look the best. Carson Wentz, like I said, that shovel pass, he ruined it for everybody. And then the Colts offensive line is terrible, and Wentz just tries way too hard. I mean, it's good to have a guy that tries, but he's going to get himself hurt a lot. I mean, he already is hurt. He's one of the quarterbacks that got injured, in week 2. Next, you have this Steelers. Raiders won 26-17. That was honestly a surprise to me. Derek Carr had 382 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, and Henry Ruggs, who goes fast, had 5 receptions, 133 yards. Big Ben had 295 yards, a touchdown, interception. My takeaway, Steelers are terrible. Their offense is one-dimensional and lifeless. They can't run the ball to save their lives. They can't do even their passing game isn't very good. I mean, heck, even one of the receivers, Johnson, got injured on the last play of the game. And, the only thing that's going for them is their defense. They cannot be carried by their defense the entire season. It doesn't work. It didn't work last year. I mean, 11-0, it was a fluky 11-0 start, so they can't be doing that. The Steelers are bad. I really don't think they're very good. And on the Raiders end, I think Derek Carr is underrated, and that's coming from a Chiefs fan, which really hurts to say after this week especially. But Derek Carr is very good. He played amazing football. I think John Gruden really trusts him to get the wins that they need to get. And so, I mean, Derek Carr is really good, and I really like Derek Carr. I think he's underrated, even if it is coming from a Chiefs fan. 49ers Eagles, I mean, there's not much in this one. Jimmy G had 189 yards, a touchdown. Deebo Samuel had another good game, 6 receptions, 93 yards. Jalen Hurts had 190 yards. Quez Watkins, I think is who it is. He had only 2 receptions, but 117 yards, because one of them was like a 91-yard pass attempt, which somehow the Eagles didn't score on that drive, which is awful. There wasn't any offense on this game. Eagles, they can be good. I really do think the Eagles can be good. I think Jalen Hurts is a very good quarterback for the Eagles, and I think he's going to be much better than Carson Wentz. But, man, neither team could get anything going. Even on that long play where they flipped the field, they didn't capitalize on it. I mean, there really wasn't much going for either team on this. Honestly, I don't think Kyle Shanahan trusts Jimmy Garoppolo, so at this point, they should probably just put in Trey Lance, and then Jimmy G needs to go somewhere else. Like, I don't know. I don't want him to go to New York, but, already New York needs a quarterback, with Tua hurt, heck, Jimmy G might be able to fit in to the Miami offense, so wasn't pretty of a game, but, hey, 49ers got the win, and, yeah. So now we have the Browns-Texans. Browns won 31-21. Baker had 213 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. Nick Chubb had 11 carries for 95 yards. Tyrod Taylor had 125 yards and a touchdown before he got injured. He did not return. And then David Mills had 102 yards, a touchdown, and an interception himself. Honestly, this game was a lot closer than I thought it was going to be. They played tough. The only takeaway I have is the Browns won the game they should have won. Baker's starting to show up, proving people wrong. I think Baker's a very good quarterback. Last week and this week. So, I mean, he did get injured. He goes all out every play. He doesn't give up. He got himself injured on a play, but, you got to respect somebody who does that. So, you know, Baker's pretty good. I really like him, and I think he can take the Browns pretty far. We just hope that they can keep this up, because for a second there in the first half, this game was really fun because, well, we don't know much about the Texans and the Browns. We know what they're supposed to be. The Texans kept it close, but at the end of the day, the Browns, won the game that they should have won. So congrats to the Browns on that Week 2 victory. Next, we had the Broncos-Jaguars. Broncos won 23-13. Teddy Bridgewater had a massive game, 328 yards, 2 touchdowns, and Courtland Sutton had 9 receptions and 159 yards. Jags, Trevor Lawrence sucked, 118 yards, a touchdown, and 2 interceptions. Teddy Bridgewater is a nice fit for the Broncos. I think it's exactly what they're looking for. Courtland Sutton and Teddy Bridgewater might become one of those, top combos. I think Teddy Bridgewater and Courtland Sutton might become a top receiving duo, just like, Hill and Mahomes, Kelsey Mahomes, Tyler Lockett, Russell Wilson, DK Metcalf, Russell Wilson, Brady Gronk. So, I mean, Teddy Bridgewater is doing exactly what the Broncos want him to do. And they're 2-0, which is not something we looked at, and actually tied at the top of their division with the Raiders, which really sucks because the Chiefs, like I said, as a Chiefs fan, it really sucks to see the competition that we need to, lose being good. But, I mean, it was really cool to see Teddy Bridgewater doing what he needs to. And the AFC West is actually looking like a tough division this year, along with the NFC West. So that'll be fun. Jags are terrible. Lawrence hasn't been very good to start the season. I mean, who knows? Does Urban Meyer even actually want to be there? But it is what it is. Lawrence sucks. He'll get better. But other than that, there was a special teams play that the Broncos gave up for the Jaguars. But other than that, this game really wasn't close. Next, you had the Panthers Saints. Panthers win 26-7. Panthers, Sam Darnold had 305 yards, 2 touchdowns, and interception. Christian McCaffrey took the load today. He had 24 carries, 72 yards, 5 receptions, 65 yards for 137 total yards. Jameis Winston had 111 yards and 2 interceptions. Week 1 was a fluke. Saints were terrible. Jameis looked like the Tampa Jameis. I don't count our chickens before the egg hatch, is whatever the saying is. Like, that was bad. Jameis and the Saints. I don't know. I don't know what to make of it yet. We have to see a little bit more, but that was not very good. Sam Darnold, I mean, he's found a fit, and I'm really liking what Sam Darnold has going for him. He had 1 turnover. That was about it for him. It was a really bad one. He got a lot of pressure coming towards him in the pocket, and then he just gave up a really bad interception. But, I mean, with him and then Robbie Anderson and Christian McCaffrey, he has those weapons around him. He can do everything that the Panthers need him to do, and I think that Matt Rule can, help Sam Darnold become the quarterback that he should be. Next, you have the Bills-Dolphins. Bills won 35-0. Josh Allen had 179 yards, 2 touchdowns, and interception. Tua got injured early on in this game, which Jacoby Brissett came in, threw 169 yards and a touchdown. There was a lot of turnovers. This game was sloppy. The Bills capitalized on what they needed to do. I mean, I think this score is very deceiving. I didn't see anything that was very impressive from either team. I mean, Josh Allen did what he had to when he was close to the end zone or in the red zone, scored. But, I mean, other than that, this game was pretty bad. Dolphins looked terrible. They couldn't do anything. Their offensive line was bad. And so, I mean, Bills won 35-0. So, I don't know. See what the Dolphins can do. And, I mean, the Bills won. I mean, they look better than they did last week, that's for sure. Another game I forgot to mention earlier when I was doing this review, mainly because it just kind of flew under my radar. Patriots defeated the Jets 25-6. Patriots, Mac Jones had 186 yards. Damian Harris had 16 carries, 62 yards, and a nice TD run. Zach Wilson had 210 yards, 4 interceptions. I mean, the only things to say is Zach Wilson is awful. And, he has a lot to work on before he's going to be even a good quarterback in the NFL. And Bill Belichick, as always, is just dominant against rookie quarterbacks. And, he had everything dialed up to defeat him. And then you look at Mac Jones, and he did every little thing right, didn't make any mistakes, just did all the little things correct to help his team win. Next, you had the Bears-Bengals. Bears won 20-17. Andy Dalton got injured early on in the game. And then Justin Fields came in, threw for 60 yards, and then had an interception, which that interception was pretty bad. Bengals, Joe Burrow had 207 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 3 interceptions. And then, the only thing I have on this game, Bengals and the Bears both struggled on offense. Joe Burrow had quite 3 interceptions in the third quarter, which, obviously took their chances away from winning. But the turnover that the Bengals got did allow them to score points, make the game close. But, it was a little too late. Too late because, Joe Burrow and the Bengals struggled quite a bit all day. He did have a nice play to Jamar Chase, which that's going to be a nice combo for years to come. And then, Justin Fields came in. Some people were saying he played well. I didn't think he played very well. That turnover, like I said, led to points. And so, if they're going to go with Justin Fields, they just need to leave him in there, get those game reps, because just taking him out isn't going to help him at all. Because he's not going to be able to build confidence. He's not going to be able to learn. So, yeah, I think they just need to play him and, let him improve and see how much better he can be if he just consistently plays all day or the whole game. Next game, Falcons. Bucks demolished Falcons 48-25. Tom Brady, 276 yards, 5 touchdowns. Matt Ryan had 300 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 3 interceptions. The only thing I have, the Falcons are terrible. They did have a spurt there where they were trying to make it close, but their defense couldn't stop anything. Matt Ryan had 2 pick sixes, and then, they're trying to have him carry the entire team, and he can't do that. Tom Brady is Tom Brady. It's going to be hard to beat a Tom Brady team, but the Falcons were just bad all around today. You couldn't stop the Bucs offense. They have weapons everywhere. You have Tom Brady and Gronk cooking up for 2 touchdowns early on in the game. It's going to be a long day. And so, yeah, the Falcons are bad. They have weapons on that team. It's just, they're just bad. Their defense isn't going to help them either. Next game, you had the Cardinals and Vikings. Cardinals won 34-33. Cardinals' Kyler Murray had a big day, 400 yards passing, 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, and a rushing touchdown. Dale Moore had 7 receptions for 114 yards and a touchdown. Kirk Cousins had 244 yards, 3 touchdowns, and Dalvin Cook had 131 rushing yards. The Vikings don't have a defense. They gave up huge plays to the Cardinals all game. Kyler Murray was unstoppable. He did throw a couple interceptions, but other than that, this Cardinals offense was damn near impossible to stop. And then, on the Vikings side, Kirk Cousins looked all right, but, he couldn't keep up with the Cardinals. And then whenever he did get it close when he needed to, the Vikings missed a kick, to possibly win the game, and he missed it. So it looks like the Vikings are in for a kicker. But Kyler Murray, he might be an early MVP favorite along with probably Tom Brady, Derek Carr, and then you'll see later here in a second, you'll have Derrick Henry. He was really good. There's a few. At least Jameis Winston's off the MVP hype, but yeah, I think Kyler Murray is an early MVP favorite. Next, you have the Titans defeating the Seahawks 33-30 in overtime. Ryan Tannehill had 347 yards passing. Derrick Henry literally had the ball the entire game. Struggled in the first half, but, ended the game with 35 carries, 182 yards, 3 touchdowns. He did have 6 receptions and 55 yards for 237 total yards. And Julio Jones had a much better game this week with 6 receptions and 128 yards. Seahawks, Russell Wilson had 343 yards, 2 touchdowns. Tyler Lockett had 8 receptions, 178 yards, and a touchdown. This game was fun. The Titans defense looked pretty bad, and some would say the Seahawks defense was bad, but they stopped Derrick Henry for the good part of for the beginning of the game, and then he just came alive. He was unstoppable in the second half and overtime, and then when you have Julio and that Titans offense clicking, it's going to be hard to stop them. They looked like last year's offense, but adding Julio, and if he has games like that, they're going to be even better. Their defense could get a little bit better, not giving up those huge plays to Russ and Tyler Lockett, which is a deadly combo in the NFL. It's like, I think they've had like 2 or 3, maybe even 4 really huge chunk plays this year. And, the Titans kept it close. Seahawks kept it close, went to overtime, and then Titans won that game in overtime with a field goal. Next, you had the Chargers and the Cowboys. Cowboys won 20-17. Dak Prescott had 237 yards and interception. Both of the Cowboys running backs look really good. Tony Pollard especially had 13 carries, 109 yards and a touchdown, and Zeke had 16 carries, 71 yards and a touchdown. Herbert, had a good game himself, 338 yards, a touchdown, 2 interceptions. Now, before we even do this, the refs were god awful in this game. The biggest one to me is probably when, they called a sack on Justin Herbert when he was literally trying to get rid of the ball. And I thought that was a terrible, terrible call. That the penalties killed the Chargers all game. They had 2 or 3 touchdowns taken off the board because of interception or penalties. And then the 2 interceptions by Herbert didn't help them any because, if you're making mistakes penalty-wise and then you're throwing interceptions, that's going to be a hard way to win the game. But he does have one of the best arms in football, and I think it rivals, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes as some of the best in football. So, the Chargers are going to be very good. Like they said, the AFC West is going to be a very competitive division along with the NFC West, and so that's going to be a lot of fun to see. And then, like I said, the Cowboys' running game was great. Tony Pollard would literally be a starter on any other team, but because Zeke's making so much money, Zeke's making so much money, he has to play here. It's going to be like, well, why is Jerry Jones paying him? Micah Parsons is their best defensive player for the Cowboys. That's pretty hard to dispute. The Cowboys' defense is pretty bad. They did have DeMarcus Lawrence, who's out, but their defense still isn't the best because I feel like if it wasn't for those penalties taking the touchdowns off this board, this game would have been a blowout by the Chargers. So they did get lucky with those. And then at the end of the game, Mike McCarthy and his clock management felt like Andy Reid years ago, and it's still today. They let the clock run down, and I was like, what are they doing? And I thought they were about to blow it and send it to overtime, but Greg Sirline, I think their kicker, made a kick at the end of the game to allow them to get the win as time expired. So Cowboys won close, which is surprising, but hey, there's a lot of things they could clean up on both ends by both teams. And then we get to the Sunday night game. The Ravens defeated the Chiefs 36-35. The Ravens, Lamar Jackson, had 239 yards passing, a touchdown, 2 interceptions. He had 16 carries by himself, 107 yards, 2 rushing touchdowns, and Hollywood Brown, had 6 receptions, 113 yards, and a touchdown. Patrick Mahomes had 343 yards, 3 touchdowns, and interception, and Travis Kelce had another big game with 7 receptions, 109 yards, and a touchdown. This game was frustrating as all hell to watch. The Chiefs literally don't have a run defense, didn't make any adjustments in the second half to even remotely try to stop him. I'm not a big fan because they're spending a lot of money on their defensive line, and I like Chris Jones, but I do not think that he should be playing on the end of the line. I really don't. I think he plays better in the middle, which if he played in the middle, it may have let the run stop, but I don't think Chris Jones is an outside run defensive end type player. The only good things going that the Chiefs defense have had was the Honey Badger had 2 interceptions, one of them for a pick 6. So that, he made himself a lot of money, and that was nice and all, but the Chiefs' run defense is awful, and there was a lot of mistakes by the Chiefs that honestly cost them the game. Mahomes had a really bad interception that's not like him, and then at the end, Clyde fumbled the ball, which then literally put the game out of reach at that point. The defense tried hard, but at the end of it to stop it when they still had all 3 timeouts. But, on the 4th and 1, the Ravens went for it, and, John Harbaugh was, John was just like, yeah, we're just gonna go for it. He was like, Lamar, you want to go for it? And he's like, yeah, and he iced the game. And this Chiefs defense is worse than 2018. And then, like I said, they made no adjustments. And then, obviously, that's Mahomes' first loss in his career in September. But let's not take any credit away from the Ravens. They played a hell of a game. You take away Lamar's, pick 6, this game is nowhere near in reach as it was. And the Ravens are going to be a threat for a while, all season, I think. The Ravens have a deadly run combo. They rushed for more yards than I even care to look up because it was that bad, and it sucked, and it stunk, and it stung to even try to make it type up the notes for this review because it was so bad. But I mean, give credit where it's due. The Ravens played one hell of a game. Lamar Jackson had some big passes, especially that touchdown to Brown. So take nothing away. I think Lamar Jackson is an elite quarterback, and I heard a good comparison today. I don't think he's quite a quarterback, but he's a playmaker. He will do everything he can each play to make sure to get the most out of each play. So it was a struggle, but, the Chiefs will be better. Got to keep heads up for that one. And so, yeah, that was a struggle. All right, so now we have Monday Night Football, which was an amazing game to start. The first half, it was really, really good. The second half wasn't necessarily the best, but, the NFL has been putting on banger after banger of primetime games, and it's really been good for the league, I think, because, good primetime games drives viewership, and, higher viewership means, the NFL is doing fantastic, and I've thoroughly enjoyed every game they've put on. I mean, the second half of this one might tell a little bit of a different story, but that first half I thought was beautiful. So the Monday Night Football game, Packers defeated the Lions 35-17. Aaron Rodgers had an amazing game, throwing for 255 yards, 4 touchdowns. Aaron Jones had a game, and Aaron Jones in this one game may have turned into one of my favorite players in the NFL just by this one game. He had 17 carries, 67 yards, and a rushing touchdown, along with 6 receptions, 48 yards, and 3 receiving touchdowns. So he's an amazing running back. He can do everything you need him to do. And then Devontae Adams, of course, is great. 8 receptions, 121 yards. And then for the Lions, Jared Goff had 246 yards, 2 touchdowns, an interception, and then led his team with 46 rushing yards. TJ Hawkinson and Quintez Cephus are both pretty good receivers. Hawkinson's, I think, is the top tight end in football. He had 8 receptions, 66 yards, and a touchdown, and Cephus had 4 receptions, 60-something yards, and a touchdown, which, they both had really good games. That first half was great. I mean, both offenses were rolling. There really wasn't much defense to speak of. There was a couple stops. Penalties really killed the Lions in the first half with one of their drives. I mean, it's hard to convert a 1st and 25. So the penalties on that drive really hurt them. And then the Lions were able to get a sack on Rodgers in the first half to kill one of their drives, but there really wasn't much defense to show up in the first half with, both offenses just rolling. I mean, the Packers look much better than they did last week, and I mean, a lot of people say you can't really judge a team off of week 1, and I think it's true for the Packers because they came out firing. I know they played a lesser opponent in the Lions, but they came off firing, and I think they're back to where they need to be, and Aaron Rodgers looked much better than last week. This week, he actually looked like he wanted to be there. I don't know why. There was just that feel to me that, like, last week he didn't want to be there, but this week he definitely felt like he wanted to be there. And so, I mean, they had a very good game. Aaron Jones, like, I'm in awe. That was a very good game by him. I really enjoyed watching him that game against the Lions. That was awesome. In the second half, the Packers took over. I think the Lions ran 9 offensive plays in the second quarter. I mean, turnovers really hurt them. Goff had a fumble and an interception in the second half, which, doesn't really help a team. The Packers defense definitely tightened up and got a lot better in the second half. And then, you always have to mention Rodgers to Devontae Adams, that deep ball on like a 3rd and 12. Like, that's like Chiefs level stuff right there. Like, it's rare because on 3rd and long, they just run the ball. All right, let's get our opponents in room. They said, no, we're going deep. And that was a beautiful pass. So, I mean, Rodgers to Devontae. I think probably earlier in this review, I was listing off quarterback receiving combos. I completely forgot about Rodgers to Adams because of last week's terrible game that the Packers had. But I think I've come to the realization that Rodgers to Adams is the best receiving quarterback combo in football. I mean, even come from a Chiefs fan when I think Kelsey and Mahomes and Tyreek Hill and Mahomes are great. I think Rodgers and Adams is a great combo, and the Packers definitely got a win that they should have won, needed really bad, and it's now time for the Packers to get rolling.